Welcome, we're continuing to work through Daniel 11, and in this video we'll be covering verses 18 to 19. So in our last video, we discussed the 5th Syrian War, in which Antiochus III decisively beat Ptolemy in battle, allowing him to expand his borders and take control of Judea. Immediately after this victory, we read in verse 18, quote, "Afterward he, Antiochus III, shall turn to the coastlands, and shall capture many. But a commander shall put an end to his insolence. Indeed, he shall turn his insolence back upon him." So here we're told that after the 5th Syrian War, Antiochus will turn to the coastlands and shall capture many. This is referring to his expeditions into Asia Minor. Newsom, in her commentary, writes the following. Now, following the end of the 5th Syrian War, he turned his attention to Thrace and Greek territories, referred to in verse 18 as the coastlands. This action brought him into conflict with Rome. Although Antiochus was initially successful, the Roman army defeated him initially at Thermopylae in central Greece in 191, and then decisively at Magnesia in Asia Minor in 189. Although verse 18 is difficult and possibly corrupt, it clearly alludes to these events. The commander would be P. Cornelius Scipio, who presented the conditions for peace to Antiochus III at Apamea in 188. So now when we look back at verse 18, and the text tells us that it is a commander who defeats Antiochus III, we know that this is referring to the Roman general Lucius Cornelius Scipio. And Scipio decisively defeats Antiochus at the Battle of Magnesia. And as a result of this defeat, Rome presents the terms of peace, known as the Treaty of Apamea. And this is an absolutely humiliating treaty for the Seleucid Empire. It requires Antiochus to surrender territory and scale down his army. So verse 18 is clearly referring to the Treaty of Apamea when it says that the commander shall put an end to his insolence. Indeed, he shall turn his insolence back upon him. The Treaty of Apamea is recorded for us by Appian, who outlined all the requirements Scipio imposes upon Antiochus. Quote, "He must abandon Europe altogether, and all of Asia this side of the Tarsus, the boundaries to be fixed hereafter. He shall surrender all the elephants he has, and such number of ships as we may prescribe. And for the future keep no elephants, and only so many ships as we allow. He must also give 20 hostages, whom the council will select, and pay for the cost of the present war incurred on his account. If Antiochus accepts these conditions without guile, we will grant him peace and friendship subject to the Senate's ratification." We continue to read in Appian that all the terms offered by Scipio were accepted by the ambassadors. That part of the money which was to be paid down and the 20 hostages were furnished. Among the latter was Antiochus IV Epiphanes, the younger son of Antiochus. End quote. And now I finally get to introduce the pivotal figure in Daniel 11, and that is Antiochus IV Epiphanes, the youngest son of Antiochus III. This man, from our perspective, will be the most significant king of the Seleucid Empire. It is Antiochus IV that the author of Daniel believes will usher in the end of the world. So let's provide some greater context to who this man is. So Antiochus III has two sons. The eldest is Seleucus IV, and the youngest son is Antiochus IV. Now, as we have read in Appian, the Treaty of Apamea requires certain Seleucid officials to go to Rome as hostages, and among these is Antiochus IV. So Antiochus IV must go to Rome and be a hostage in order to fulfill the Treaty of Apamea. Okay, let's now return to verse 18 to get our bearings and then continue on to verse 19. "Afterward, he, Antiochus III, shall turn to the coastlands, and shall capture many, but a commander shall put an end to his insolence. Indeed, he shall turn his insolence back upon him. Then he, Antiochus III, shall turn back towards the fortresses of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall, and shall not be found." The phrase, "he shall stumble and fall," is a reference to Antiochus III's death, and we know that Antiochus dies in Susa after raiding a temple of Bel. The reason why he was looting this temple is because he needed to pay the large debt imposed by the Treaty of Apamea. The death of Antiochus III is nicely summarized by Kia in his Encyclopedia of Persia. He writes, To raise the funds, Antiochus was forced to pay the Romans. He went to pillage Ilmas in 187 BC. The Seleucid ruler had heard that the temple of Bel in Ilmas contained a large stockpile of silver and gold. This raiding trip was ill-starred. The Seleucid monarch was killed near Susa, in southern western Iran, by the local population shortly after he pillaged the temple of Bel. After the death of Antiochus III, his eldest son Seleucus IV is crowned king. So after all of these events, the king of the Seleucid Empire is Seleucus IV, and his brother Antiochus IV is still in jail in Rome fulfilling the requirements of the Treaty of Apamea. And that's where we're going to conclude this video. As always, if you're enjoying these videos, your support would be greatly appreciated. So please consider supporting me on Patreon. Find the link in the description below. If donating isn't something you're able to do, it's still tremendously helpful if you hit that like button and leave a comment. And finally, make sure you're subscribed to get my next video. Thank you for watching until the end, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.